Okay, so I want you to imagine something. Picture two separate realities, just existing right next to each other. They're like reflections in a quiet pond, you know? So close, but they never ever touch. Two completely different worlds, held apart by one single, very important rule. See, on one side, you've got this land of infinite square blocks. Think sprawling mountains, deep valleys, all made of cubes, all just born from the world itself. And then, on the other side, a world of these perfect, precision-studded bricks. Everything is intentional, with sharp angles and bright, bold colors. Now, for as long as anyone could remember, these two places shared one sacred rule. They must never, ever mix.
But of course, in any story with a rule that strict, there's always going to be someone who doesn't quite fit the mold. And in our blocky world, that someone was a young boy.
That was the voice he always heard from his mentor, Voxel. His words were never mean, but they were always firm, you know? Rooted in this old way of thinking. In their world, you had to pick a side. You were a builder, or you were a fighter, a creator, or a destroyer. There just wasn't any room for the word and.
And that's exactly where our hero Pixel got stuck. He just didn't see the world that way. To him, the beautiful, complex logic of a redstone machine was just as amazing as the grand sweep of a castle wall. He loved to blend them together, to see how art could make technology feel alive and how logic could give imagination a backbone. But to everyone else, he just seemed messy, unfocused.
And you know, that feeling of being misunderstood, well, it really started to take its toll. It seemed like the more Pixel tried to just be himself, the more he felt like a stranger in his own home.
Pretty soon, those little whispers turned into words. And the words, they became a label. Broken, unbuildable, like he was fundamentally wrong. And that is such a heavy thing for anyone to carry, especially when all you're trying to do is make something new.
And what's so tough about this is that Pixel wasn't really alone in feeling this way. I mean, in any world that demands you fit into a perfectly neat little box, there are always going to be people who feel crushed by the weight of those walls.
And after a while, he started to believe them. He thought, maybe they're right. Maybe there really is something broken inside of me. Maybe I'm just wrong.
And right then, just as Pixel hit his absolute lowest point, feeling totally lost and alone, the universe itself decided to break its own rule. Everything was about to change.
It wasn't loud, it wasn't an explosion, it was this beautiful but terrifying tear in the very fabric of his world. A shimmering portal just hanging there in the air. And on one side, he saw the familiar blocks of his home, but as they passed through the portal, they were transforming, twisting into the impossible shapes of bricks. It was a glitch.
And in his mind, he could hear Voxel's panicked voice echoing, "Don't! You'll be unmade!" It was the deepest fear of his people, this terror of the unknown, of what happens when the most important rule is broken.
But through that shimmering light, Pixel saw something else. He saw a girl, a minifigure named Clik, and her bricks were all mismatched, painted with these wild new colors. She didn't fit in either. And in that one moment, the hope of finding someone who understood it was so much stronger than the fear. He took a breath and he jumped.
And when they met, right there in that impossible space between worlds, they just got each other, instantly. She looked at his designs and saw the brilliant logic. He looked at her colorful chaos and saw true art. Broken?
Broken? No. Building.
Simple little realization, everything changed. For the very first time, being different wasn't a flaw, it was their superpower. So they started to play, to combine their skills. Pixel's organic, generated blocks with Clik's sharp, designed bricks. And from their very first creation together, something impossible bloomed into existence. The first ever hybrid tree. It was part block, part brick, part nature, part design. It was the perfect symbol that the most amazing things happen when you combine what was never supposed to mix.
And you know what? That kind of creativity, it's infectious. Soon, others started to join them, and together, they made things that neither world could have ever dreamed of on its own. They were showing everyone that their worlds didn't have to be just either or. They could finally, beautifully, be and.
Their new world was incredible. It was this big celebration of everything they were told was wrong about themselves, a paradise for all the misfits. But they kind of forgot one tiny detail, the very thing that brought them together in the first place.
From that space between realities, the glitch watched them, and it smiled. You see, their story was really just getting started. Which leaves us with a pretty big question, doesn't it? Was this whole thing just a happy accident? Or did the very force that broke the rules have its own design all along?